Hi, this is Russ with Devoted Golfer TV. I have a club fitting business here in North Dallas called Fit2Score. I'm here today with Ridge Meracle from Mizuno, and we're going to be talking about JPX. What are they called?
The new JPX 923 irons.
It's called the 923, so that means 23.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first set of JPXs, like 20. It didn't have the 9 in front of it. It was like a 21 or 22 or something like that.
Absolutely.
So I've been playing Mizuno for a very, very long time.
Sure.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk today about the changes from the JPX 2021. It would be called the 921.
Correct.
And today we're talking about the 923s.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, so what I did is I went through Mizuno's internal slide presentation and put some of it here, but not all of it, and Ridge is going to fill in the details.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's go after it. So, 923 Tour.
Sure. 923 Tour. You know, this has been a club for us that has been really successful on tour. Since we launched the first one, the JPX 900, it's been the most commonly used non-contracted iron on the market, essentially meaning we don't have to pay people to play it. They prefer playing this club because it gives them the game and the consistency that they're looking for to go as low as possible.
So what I loved in the MP series, and now this is going to compete against the MP series,
Yeah.
and one of the unique things about the MP series was the copper underlay.
The copper underlay.
Yeah, and so now we're going to have copper underlay here.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that was something from an R&D perspective we probably didn't want to do. Mm-hmm. We want to bring certain technologies just to the Mizuno Pro world. But when you're talking to golfers and to guys on tour who this is what they make their money off of, they were really wanting the copper underlay under it because it does give it that little bit softer of a feel. So bringing the copper underlay from the Mizuno Pro world into the JPX world is a huge addition to this line, just to soften that feel up even more and give us more of that Mizuno feel that everyone's looking for.
So how much does this eat into the MP Pro family?
You know,
which I love, by the way.
Absolutely. You know, everyone loves the Mizuno Pro line. That MP line, since the beginning, has always been our traditional, classic, sleek design. Yeah. It's when everyone thinks of traditional Mizunos, that's what it is the Mizuno Pro world. JPX is a little bit more technologically advanced. And when you think about the copper underlay, that's a new technology that we added. So it's just kind of going with the technology trend of JPX by adding that into it and making this the latest and greatest in what we can do in a cavity back iron.
Yeah, it's a great head. So now you've changed the shape of it a little bit.
A little bit. What
are we doing here? We've got a thinner top line.
We do.
Tell me about the shape changes.
Absolutely. You know, when it comes to the guys on tour, they want to see something a little smaller. They want the thinnest top lines possible. Mm-hmm. But there's a really big challenge from an R&D perspective. Once you start thinning out that top line, you start to lose the feel that people look for in a golf club.
Right.
So one of the things that you're going to notice throughout the entire JPX series is going to be what's called our V chassis. And you can actually see it in the picture as well here. That V chassis, what it does.
So I'm seeing a couple Vs. I got a V there, I got a V there.
Yeah. So it adds more rigidity to the frame. So essentially, picture a golf club like a tuning fork.
A tuning fork?
Yeah.
You tune these with a tuning fork? Should I go out and get a wine glass, and tap on it and go tap on that?
You know, it's funny. If you wanted to, if you actually stripped the shaft out of here and struck it, it would ring out like a tuning fork. So Mizuno, one of the things that we do with every one of our irons is something called harmonic impact testing. Mm-hmm. So we actually measure the vibration frequencies and the sound frequencies. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, just like anything, there's a certain tolerance that the human feel prefers. And we've gone and used
the human ear prefers.
Both of them. Sound equates to feel.
Yeah.
All vibration equates the same way. So getting something that's more appealing to the human ear and human eye, and this is something that we've been doing for a very long time, we want to make them as consistently feel the same as possible. So adding that technology in there gives us the most optimal feel and gives us that, really the tagline of nothing feels like a Mizuno.
Mm-hmm. So if you get the sound right, you'll get the feel right. They run together.
They go hand in hand. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's something that we always make sure with, whether it be the JPX Tours or even the new JPX Hot Metals. It's not just something that we use just in our forged irons. Yeah, that harmonic impact testing is going to be in everything.
Okay. I forgot what our next bullet point was, so I had to look at the screen. Okay, more cambered sole. So the sole is narrower?
It's a little bit more narrow. Believe it or not, there's a big misconception out there in golf A golf club is designed to hit the ground. There's some people who struggle doing that, but you want to have something that's going to have the most efficient turf interaction, especially on tour. You want something that's going to cut through that turf crisply, that gives them a more consistent strike.
Yeah. So I remember the old stories about, if you went to get a fitting from Mr. Miro, which would be a 5-figure number, that he would be on his hands and knees behind you, listening to turf interaction.
Absolutely.
So turf interaction. So you're working on turf interaction. You're getting narrower, which I love.
Especially
Right.
out here in Texas.
Yeah. So what was the term you used earlier?
I called it a Bermuda grind.
Okay.
Just an old grind. It's an old saying that I was always hearing when I was growing up. Because if you've ever hit out a Bermuda, it's a little thicker of a grass, and the ball loves to just get swallowed when it gets into the rough, so it just sinks straight to the roots. So when you have a Bermuda grind, it's just a little bit thinner, just help cut through that turf a little bit more, so we can get a consistent strike. Because at the end of the day, that's what the tour player is looking for, is the most consistent strike possible.
Okay. And right-handed only.
Right-handed only.
Now, the reason I put that in here is because when I was looking through the sides last night, I noticed that almost all of the JPX line is left-handed as well as right-handed. That's new.
That's very new.
Yeah.
The left-handed category in golf is growing exponentially, and I think that not just Mizuno, but the entire industry has been really neglecting the left-handed golfer. And I'm a lefty. I'm a lefty in everything but golf. Growing up in the industry, I was kind of taught probably stay right-handed.
Yeah.
But I do understand the struggles that the left-handed person has. So you are going to see in the line as we go through it, you're going to see more left-handed options than ever before in the JPX line.
Well, you're not going to see this on any of the other slides.
Not this one, but there's a lot of offerings. This is the most left-handed options we've ever had in a golf line since I've ever been at Mizuno.
Yeah, I've noticed because, when people show up for fittings and they don't tell me that they're lefties, right? And so I do have a bag of lefty heads, and, the lefty comes in, he goes, I'd like to see that. I go, well, here are your choices.
Yeah.
This is the lefty bag. And it's not a lot of choices.
It's not. I mean, at the end of the day, the left-handed golfer is a very small population of the golfing world. And
The number I heard was 7%. Is that about right?
that's about what I was hearing as well.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a club here that may fit, if we're lucky, 20% of the golfing world.
Right.
Majority of the golfers need a little bit of help getting the ball in the air, get a little bit more ball speed. So if we're talking about 7% of, let's just say 20% of here, that's such a small number.
Yeah, I get it. So anything else that we need to be talking about this other than the fact that it's not releasing until January?
I think the one thing that I would definitely tell people about this club is it's traditionally lofted. We're talking about clubs nowadays that are stronger lofted. This one's 2 to 3 degrees stronger than traditional. The 7-iron, this one's at 34 degrees.
Okay.
So if you're looking for something that's going to be the most traditional style of golf club, this is going to be the one you're going to be looking for.
And, another question I get from people from time to time is, how much can you bend that?
That's a great question. When we're going lie angle, I would say 3 to 4. 3 very, very easily. 4, let's hope the builder knows what he's doing. Anything from loft perspective, I don't like to go more than 2. It's not that these don't bend more than 2 degrees, but once you start going past 2 degrees, you start affecting the bounce too much.
So you just mentioned traditionally lofted, and that brought to mind a question that I've been meaning to ask you for a while. So how much can I bend lie angle and loft on a forged head versus a cast head?
That's a great question. Forged is a softer metal. So one of the benefits of forged is it is a little bit more malleable so that we can adjust it a little more. I wouldn't go more than 3 to 4 degrees. 3 I'm very comfortable with. Once you get to 4, let's hope that you have a really good builder doing it. Us at Mizuno will go to 4, but no more. From a loft perspective, I don't recommend going more than 2 degrees. And it's not that these clubs can't go 2 degrees more. It's just once you start bending it past 2 degrees, you really start to affect the bounce, and you're going away from the R&D engineer's integrity of the club.
Right.
They have a certain design they're looking for.
you're starting to affect this. So when I get into heads that have too much bounce, and especially sometimes in wedges,
Yeah.
if I deal off them, I know I'm taking some of the bounce out.
You are, and that's something that people don't really think about, but we talked about this earlier. One of the most important things is turf interaction, and the bounce is very critical to the turf interaction. So once we start bending a little bit past that 2, we're going away from the bounces that really work well for that certain club number.
Yeah. So we get to talk a little bit about wedges later. Let's move on here.
Yeah.
So we don't put you all to sleep. 923 forged.
Yes. This has been a club that really, from the 921 perspective, took a humongous jump forward in ball speed and in core area. But on top of that, with the new JPX, we're now able to go even thinner in a smaller package. So it's like you said on here, it's a thinner face. It's got the highest COR in a one-piece forging. Essentially, what COR means is that's just equating to more ball speed.
Trampoline effect.
Exactly.
Yeah. How fast does a ball come off?
Correct.
In relation to head speed. Of course, at some point, this stops mattering, right? Right around somewhere between 6-iron to 7-iron?
Yeah.
You're not getting enough compression that this matters.
No.
Not everybody understands that.
No.
You can't make a hot 8-iron.
Why would you want a hot 8-iron?
Well, you can't even make it,
No.
right? But, so when you get into these high coefficient of restitution irons, you're really talking about a little bit of effect in the 6-iron, but then more in the 5 and 4.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
So highest coefficient of restitution in a one-piece forging. How'd you do that?
It was just going thinner. Finding ways to make it a thinner face. Getting that wider micro slot gave us the ability to change the launch trajectory of this club as well as the COR.
So when people think about slots, they're typically thinking about the face. We're not talking about the face here, right?
No.
We're talking about going into here on this picture, going into here, and going straight in with a mill and cutting a groove in here.
Correct.
And the purpose of that is to make the bottom of the face thin. So, where do most of us miss the ball? We thin the shot,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So the bottom of the face is hotter, so that sweet spot is more down into the bottom of the face.
Sure.
But I don't see the groove in here.
We fill it back in because you don't want anything, again, to affect the turf interaction. You put a channel in there, it's going to catch a little bit more into that turf. So what we do is you go through the sole of that club because you can make the cavity parallel to the face. You want it as parallel to the face as possible because that makes it to where you have the COR and the core area actually more distributed evenly out through the face versus one concentrated area.
Yeah.
That's very important. In the name of the game, COR is a number that we've all pretty much gotten to the maximum number at. We can't increase COR any more than what we're at.
You could if you wanted to build illegal clubs.
If you want to build an illegal club.
Yeah.
But now the name of the game is how do we increase COR throughout the face? And that's what core area is. Core area is the area of the face that has the maximum amount of COR. And that's something that
And I know that's on one of the other slides. I went looking for it. No, it's not there. So let me back up here.
Sure.
Okay. So we've got a wider micro slot, which is the groove that's in here that you can't see.
Yes.
Because you can't mill this from here.
You can, and that used to be the standard practice, but again, you're not parallel to the face. It's impossible to go through the top of the club and make it parallel. Right. So you start to lose that core area on other parts of the face where, again, we're trying to maximize it throughout the entire club.
And so thinner top line, but that's not just a thinner top line. This is a smaller head overall, isn't it?
Absolutely. We've figured out a way to maintain our COR and maintain our forgiveness in a smaller package. When you're getting into the clubs with a forged model, people don't want to look down at bigger clubs. The smaller, the better. So for us, adding that V chassis that you see here, just like in the other Tour model, gave us the ability to reinforce that top line and make it more rigid to where we can go thinner on the top line without losing that feel.
So if we get the face smaller, it's easier to square this and hold it, isn't it? Because the point of rotation is here.
Yep.
And if we take this and we make it excessively long, what do we do to that club in order to get it to rotate to square?
You're just creating more time for it to have to rotate.
Yeah. Or you offset it?
You could. Or said, did we offset this one?
No, this one is not.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I thought you could.
But, in this, I mean, that's one of the ways to help it get square.
Sure.
And I absolutely have a very, very difficult time bringing somebody that has trained in on highly offset clubs, and then you put a better club in their hand, everything goes right.
Yeah.
The face is, the face timing is off for them.
Absolutely.
They're used to having more time for that club to come to square, and it's only a tiny piece of a microsecond from here to there, right?
Gosh, it makes you just make this game so much more frustrating, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The smallest little change, and it just changes everything.
Yeah. And well, it's one of the reasons I don't like big offsets. Because I can't move that player up easily. He has to retrain his timing.
Absolutely. And that's why you should come see somebody like us when you are getting fit, because you don't want to just go out blind and then you get a new setting. Like, why am I going right? We know why. It's because the offset is now less.
Yeah.
But that's when it shows you why it's so important to go out and get fit and make sure that we got you in the right club head.
Okay. So what do I have in my hand? I have the hot metal.
You have the brand new JPX 923 hot metal.
Oops, went backwards. There we go. 923 hot metal. So let's look at our first point. What does this mean?
Nickel chromoly. So if you follow the Mizuno world over the last, since the 900 series, we have been using a metal called chromoly. Mm-hmm. And what chromoly is, it is a metal that we have been using that's very malleable in a one-piece cast. But from the 4140 that we're using before, we have now maxed out how thin we could make that face.
Okay.
So switching to this nickel chromoly gave us the ability to go thinner. This isn't a new metal. It's just a newer metal to the golf industry. If you're familiar at all with military aircraft or commercial aircraft, it's used a lot in landing gears. It's a very malleable material. It's a very dense material. And it gave us the ability to actually go 8% thinner on our club face than the previous lines before that.
So I want to go back to an earlier spot in this conversation. You said more malleable. How much can I bend them?
I'm very comfortable bending those 2 degrees.
So you're saying 2 degrees, where with the forge we were looking at 4 degrees.
Correct. And usually cast is a little bit more, it's a little firmer, just the practice and how it cools.
A little?
It is. But I'll tell you what.
I got to load up on the bending bars.
We've gotten a lot better, I think, and that's not just Mizuno. That's as an industry. We have made our cast materials softer. The materials that companies are using now are softer, so we are able to get wiggle room. I mean, you remember bending clubs 15 years ago. You were lucky to get one.
Yeah.
And if you did get
and some of them you'd have to send back to the manufacturer. You couldn't bend them.
No. I remember there was one set of clubs out there that you'd bend it 2 degrees, leave it for an hour, and it come back to 1 up. So you just had to keep fighting it. Yeah. So we have gotten a lot better as an industry at finding materials that are malleable so that we can fit that club to you.
And that's where we get into these exotic materials.
Absolutely.
So we've got a new metal, and that metal has allowed you to go thinner, and that results in
a core
the
area
word you
increase.
used earlier, core area. You want to explain that again?
Yeah, COR is the maximum number of the trampoline effect essentially on the golf club on the center impact. We've all maxed out what we can get from a COR perspective in irons and in drivers. That's why when people say, oh, we've increased the ball speed. How? Because you can't increase COR. But the new name of the game is, how do I increase my COR and max it out throughout the entire face? And that's the name of the game now. So we're trying to find ways to get more ball speed on a miss hit to where it's more consistent throughout the entire face.
So when I see somebody and I'm looking at his impact marks and they're all over here, hot metal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So 16% is a huge number in the R&D world. To increase something that much in one model generation is a massive number. And I don't want to understate that, because when people think of 16%, they're like, well, that's not a big number. But in the R&D world and in the golf club industry, that is a massive number.
In any metal manufacturing world,
Absolutely.
16% is a
huge.
Big number.
It's huge. So for us to be able to say, hey, that we've increased our core area in that amount while also thinning out the face, give us more ball speed, but also maintaining the sound and feel that we're looking for in a golf club. Tip of the cap to the R&D department, because that is very, very hard to do.
Okay. Hot Metal Pro. This is my favorite hot metal.
This has been one that's just really, really taken off. We announced this at the I want to say it was a couple years ago at the PGA show. I don't want to say the wrong date, but it took off. People were looking for something like the hot metal that just had a little bit less offset to it.
Yeah.
There's plenty of golfers out there who played maybe in college, played in high school, who don't have the time to practice as much as they'd like.
Right.
But they don't want to look at something with a lot of offset. Because like you were saying earlier, if you have offset, your timing can be thrown off if you're used to having a certain amount.
Right.
So bringing in this Hot Metal Pro that has that amount of forgiveness, just like the Hot Metal, in a little bit smaller package with a little less offset.
Okay, so there it is, a little less offset.
Yeah.
And, these are the things I like, the thinner top line, but more important than that for me is the narrower sole.
Absolutely. And we said it earlier, because where we live in Texas, that narrow sole helps us just cut through that turf a little bit more.
Yeah. What would you call it? That Bermuda grind. Yeah, I love that word. Yeah.
It's a great way it's a good way to see the imagery of it, because if you've ever played Bermuda grass, it is a nightmare sometimes if you're getting out of the rough all day.
Yeah. So is there a Hot Metal Pro head there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, this is where I fall in love with this. It's just a thinner sole.
Just slightly.
Right. And then this is significantly cambered, so you really don't have as much turf drag as you would think because of how this is cambered off in the back.
And if you look at the way that we've done the finish on it, and you'll see on the top line too, we go from satin to that mirror finish. What that does is it gives us the illusion of that club is even smaller. If you're a 30 handicap or if you're a +3 handicap, you don't want to look down at something that's large. You don't want to see the sole at the bottom of the club.
Yeah.
So for us to be able to make all that just fall off the back of the club really makes it look even more compact than it really is.
Okay. Yeah. Love this club. When the Pro version came out, I wasn't really fond of this just because of the width of it.
Sure.
But, as when this came out, this is...
It just shows you that we listen.
Yeah.
We listen to what people are saying, and we listen to what people want. So for us to be able to add something else into the line, and then you'll see when we bring this next one into the mix, this HL, you'll see that we were listening and kind of noticing trends in the marketplace.
Yeah. I'm going to take a look at that here in a minute. So the 923 wedge is designed for the hot metals?
Yes.
It's a match to the hot metals.
Yes, it is.
So what are we talking about here? Different material?
It's going to be an X30 stainless steel. It's something that we've been using over the past few years in our JPX world. Just gives us that really soft feel that you're looking for. But also being an X30 stainless, we were able to maximize the perimeter weighting on this club to where we can get it to be more consistent and actually match up to the Hot Metals and Hot Metal Pros a little bit more than what we'd say maybe a T22 would.
Okay. So a T22 has a little bit of boron in the face.
It does.
Yeah.
It
so
does.
the grooves last a little longer.
Correct. And the main reason for that.
And so here we're going to see the same thing. We're going to see longer lasting grooves.
Yes, and it's because of the way that they're designed. The T22 is a forged wedge. And we talked about it earlier. Forged is a softer metal. And because it's softer, the grooves do wear out a little quicker. So adding that boron increased the durability by 30%. With this being an X30 stainless steel, it doesn't wear out as much because it is a little bit stronger of a metal. So we don't have to worry about adding the boron into there because it's going to be more consistent and it's going to last longer on its own.
So as an aside, E21. Gone, right?
Say again?
E21 wedge.
The ES21?
ES21.
I have something coming. Stay tuned. That's going to replace that.
Okay. Because one of my teaching friends said, hey, have you worked with this thing? Mm-hmm. He said, I love it.
Let's just say the ES21 was a proof of concept.
Yeah.
We have something up our sleeves that's going to be coming out. Stay tuned. We'll do something on the video about it, but you're going to like what you see. Let's just say that.
Yeah. So we've got a milled face.
Yes.
Right? And lofts gapped for the JPX.
Makes it a lot easier just to tell the fitter, I want a gap, sand, and lob. makes it to where we can mix and match them and put them in there versus us having to figure out, well, the pitching wedge here is a 44, then we need to go to 52, or do you want a 6-degree gap, you want a 5-degree gap? Being able to go gap, sand, lob just gives us the ability to get more consistent and keep the set as consistent as possible.
So can I bend this?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So we're looking at 2 degrees.
I would say 2 degrees.
Okay. And loft-specific grooves. We haven't talked about grooves. I mean, this is a big thing.
It's a big thing. You know, Mizuno is one of the very first people to bring that technology to the market. Grooves, you need a different groove for the different swings that you do. For example, a 50-degree wedge, more than likely than not, you're going to swing that one more full, do more full swing shots than a 56-degree wedge, for example. So those are going to require different grooves. So for us, we've been able to add the loft-specific grooves. We also have loft-specific grinds, loft-specific center of gravities. Bringing the loft-specific grooves to this model gives us just more consistency when we need it around the greens or if we're going to attack a pin.
So price-wise, and we haven't brought this up before, but so the JPX 923 wedge versus the MP.
Sure. It's going to be the same price as the JPX models. So if you wanted to add the JPX sand wedge to your 4-through gap hot metal, that sand wedge is going to match the price of your JPX 923 hot metals.
Yeah, okay, so you're learning to say that word.
It's a new one for me too.
Yeah,
it's always a new one. You've been saying 921 for a couple years, so it's going to take me some time to get back into the threes.
Okay. This is interesting. This is a completely new concept.
This is a completely
new concept.
Brand new concept. So we started looking at the data that the shaft optimizer sends out to us. So if you've ever hit one of the Mizuno shaft optimizers, all that raw data is actually sent to Mizuno. And we don't know your name or anything like that, but we do get an idea of what the swing is. And we found out that 24% of golfers swing under 70 miles an hour. And almost 50% of golfers could benefit from more increased loft. So we notice, you know, as clubs have gotten stronger and stronger, for example, we're at 28.5 degrees on the 7-iron of the hot metal. A lot of golfers at 70 miles an hour cannot get enough club head speed to get the right launch to get that ball up in the air and hold it.
And if you don't have the right launch, you don't have the right angle of descent.
Nope.
And if you don't have the right angle of descent, even if you do hit the green, you're going to roll it off the back.
We're just playing croquet out there.
Yeah.
We want that ball to stop. And one of the biggest things as fitters that we try to do is how do we find ways to make it toward that descent angle and the way the ball is going into the green has the optimal ability to stop.
So let's talk about optimal descent angle.
Sure.
Yeah. Where do you see it?
With a 7-iron, I like to keep it around 45. That's my golden number. But it varies person to person. The best way to explain it is sort of an algebra equation. I can be a 43-degree descent angle, but my spin rate could be higher than average, so it's going to balance out. And vice versa, I could be a lower or a higher trajectory, say 47, with less spin. As long as we have the optimal spin and the optimal descent angle, which again for me is right around that 45, we're going to actually hold greens. And that's the difference in, let's say you landed the ball 10 feet from the hole, and it rolled 3 yards, so now we got a 19-foot putt, versus lands 10 yards, rolls 10 feet, rolls 15 yards. Now we have a 55-foot putt.
If you're not chipping from off the back of the green.
And if you're lucky, that holds on the green. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do now as golf manufacturers and OEMs, trying to find ways to get the average golfer to hold greens. I said this to you earlier. I like to play darts with my irons. I want to point and shoot. Not croquet. I don't want that ball rolling all over the green.
Yeah. And the earlier discussion was about a quote from Freddie Couples years ago. If you need more distance, what do?
Grab another club.
You got it. You got 14 of them in the bag.
Do. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. There's a pitching wedge on the market now that's at 38 degrees. That's my 8-iron.
Yeah.
It's crazy how strong these lofts have gotten. And if you're not swinging hard enough, you're not going to get the ball in the air to hold it green. So the hot metal...
If you can even get it in the air.
If you can get it in the air.
Yeah.
This is something where a lot of people probably watching this, you've heard this. I'm sure you've heard this. I've heard it plenty of times. My 5 and 6 iron go the same distance. Why? It's a loft
Because you
issue.
don't have the speed.
Exactly. So bringing this model in here is going to benefit a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so the HL is 3 degrees weaker. So it's actually at 31 degrees. It's actually 3.5 degrees weaker. So that we're able to get the ball in the air and land soft. You might lose a yard. You might lose a yard or two on your total distance. But is that something that's an easy
get another
trade-off?
club. Yeah.
Exactly. That's a
Yeah.
great trade-off for me versus me rolling off 10 yards versus me actually rolling backwards maybe a yard.
When I'm fitting, I hold up an iron and I say to people, what's your objective when you have an iron in your hand? And I never get the answer I'm looking for, and the answer I'm looking for is a short putt.
That's all it is.
That's all it is. And if you need more distance and you think you're going to get the distance by swinging harder, so, you get some exposure to tour. The tour guys, what do they think is the percentage of their strength or their ability that they should be deploying when they're swinging an iron?
Oh, if you talk to a tour player, they're only swinging 80 to 85% because that's the most controllable and the most that they can. It's all about repetition.
Yeah.
It's all about what's the one swing that I can repeat for 18 holes.
So they're not over-torquing their bodies. They're not throwing their arms off the top and trying to hit the thing as hard as they can. They just get another club.
And that's where a lot of new golfers and amateur golfers do struggle is because they try to swing out of their shoes, trying to get that extra distance. Where golf is already a hard enough game. So for you trying to change your swing to pull something off, you're just making it even harder. There's nothing.
What I tell people is the only change you can make is to swing easier. You cannot make that 7-iron go any further and expect to be on the green.
No.
It is not going to happen. If you're looking at that 7-iron distance and you're thinking that pin's 5 yards further than I can hit this, get the 6-iron out.
Get the 6-iron and just and that's where you look and see, is it smart to land short or smart to land long?
Yeah.
It's okay to be short of a green sometimes. As long as you're dancing.
I'd rather be short of a green, especially if it's pitched at me, than it would be over the green.
Absolutely.
And try to chip to a downhill spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that we've been focusing on. Like I said to you earlier, we listen, we pay attention to what the trends are and what people are needing. And bringing in a higher launch club is something that a lot of people are needing.
Yeah. So we've still got these other characteristics that we talked about before, but we've got a lower, deeper center of gravity.
Absolutely.
Is there a high launch laying there?
There is right here.
You've got one.
So if you'll notice, there's going to be a slightly bit more offset to it. It's going to have a thicker sole.
Yeah,
but
gotcha.
again, just trying to get that CG deeper into the club so that we can get that ball flied up.
Yeah.
The deeper the CG, the higher the launch of the golf
Right.
club.
Yeah, and the way that you do that is to push the weight down and push the weight back.
Absolutely.
And so this is what happens with the design when you go after that.
Correct.
But if you're only swinging, if you can't swing a single iron in your bag at 90 miles an hour, this is where you need to live.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, a quarter of the golfing world swings under 70 miles an hour. I want to say, do you know off the top of your head the average LPGA swing?
No, I don't. No.
That would be, because I always tell people when you're looking at your game and the average golfer needs to look at club head speed and distances, look at the LPGA players. They swing a lot harder than people think they do, and it's probably a lot more aligned to what the amateur golfer is going to do versus, let's say, Bryson, for example, or Justin Thomas, who they love to swing out of their shoes.
Yeah. And higher lofts, which we've already mentioned.
Yeah.
So the lofts are higher. So people, some people don't understand the concept that swing speed relates to ball speed, and the longer the ball stays in the air, the higher it goes.
Exactly.
But if you don't have the speed to get out to here, if you can't hit that apex, your apex is here, and you're on the way down without having achieved that. So,
Absolutely.
So when we look at lofts, we have to think, how fast am I swinging? Am I getting the height that I need to get that 45-degree angle of
Absolutely.
descent?
And I want to point out, too, there's nothing wrong with swinging 74, 75 miles an hour. The problem was always we didn't have the club in the market to make their game better. And that's just adding this club gives them the ability to now we can fit and customize a set for them to make their game better.
Yeah.
Because that's a big misconception. People always look for club head speed. That's the big new thing is to find 5 more yards.
Yeah. So we have a variation now that goes along with the hot metal line. You added what to me looks like a hybrid.
It's not a hybrid. And that's one thing I want to make clear. It's a direct long iron replacement, which sounds like a hybrid, but usually hybrids don't spin as much. They don't get as high up in the air. Where a JPX Fly High is designed to go the same distance that a 5-iron would, but just with a higher
Well, then a
trajectory and
5-iron
spin.
should,
Correct.
right? So can we get a little hotter face in this?
You could. We don't want to make it hotter because we want it to be as consistent as
Because
possible.
now we have a gapping issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We want
yeah.
that to fly the same gapping that the 5 to the 6 would, or the 4 to the 5 would.
Yeah.
So we use a little bit differences in center of gravities, length of the club head, or not the club head, the shaft, to
Mm-hmm.
get that height that we're looking for. Because again, like I said earlier, we're playing darts out there. I
Right.
want that ball to stop.
Yeah,
And if I
yeah.
need to get to a club that's a little wider with a little deeper center of gravity to do it, why not?
So it's a little bit longer toe to heel?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so, as you get into longer, you get into flatter, and when you get into flatter, the dispersion pattern goes toe heel.
Absolutely.
And so here we have a club designed for more toe heel dispersion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that's like an automatic. You just order the whole set like that.
And what's really cool is that club is the same price as the rest of the set.
Yeah.
So there's no difference in price because you have to play a Fly High versus a hot metal 5-iron.
So I'm trying to remember here. Lefties?
There's not a lefty in the Fly High, but there is a lefty in the hot metal and hot metal pro. There's no lefty right now in the HLs.
In this one here.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So we got that part straightened
Yeah.
out. Okay, so I think that we are at the end here, aren't we? Yep.
I think so.
So, new drivers this year?
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So I'm looking for a new wedge. I'm looking for a new driver, new putters.
I don't know. That one I will say I don't know.
Yeah.
There are some
Okay.
secrets that they like to keep from us. And just like anybody, I like to learn things the same time y'all do. I don't want to. It spoils all the fun when you know everything in advance. But
Yeah.
I've honestly told you everything that I know today.
Okay. Well, Ridge, thanks once again.
Absolutely, Russ. It's always
and
a pleasure.
We'll see you when those drivers show up.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for spending your time with us. I know that we get a little bit long-winded here. That's why we're here. As golf club builders and fitters, we need to understand the golf shafts we work with. The most comprehensive source for this knowledge is Golf Shaft Reviews. For a small annual fee, you'll have access to shaft stiffness, torque, weight, and balance data. And, most important, the EI bend profiles, the same bend profiles that are used by golf shaft engineers when they design and manufacture golf shafts. The measurements from my lab let you compare any shaft to any other shaft using the same measurement protocol. Golf Shaft Reviews also offers professional subscriptions that provide more detailed shaft data. If you want to understand golf shafts from the detailed perspective of a golf shaft engineer, take a look at Golf Shaft Reviews.